Welcome to Dan's Talks. My guest today is Jules Feiffer, who is a lifelong cartoonist who has won awards, Academy Award. He's won a Pulitzer Prize. He's won, and he's written books that won awards. He won the George Polk Award. And for a long time, I think about 15 years now, you've just retired from teaching at Southampton College. You had a course in, what was the course exactly?
It was called Humor and Truth, and it was 3 hours once a week in which I would assault the students with my avowed wisdom and get some work out of them and hope they learned something. But I certainly learned a lot, and it was a wonderful experience, all of which was the responsibility of Roger Rosenblatt, who was the head of the writing program, and all of that was his idea, and I'm forever grateful for him, to him for it.
Well, I think we all considered you a prize to have come out here to do that, and I was particularly curious about I know you won the Academy Award for, was it screenwriting?
The Academy Award was for an animated cartoon called Munro.
Right.
I believe the year was 1956, but I'm not sure. It might have been later than that. And it was based on a short book that I had written about a 4-year-old boy who gets drafted into the army by mistake and cannot convince the military that they made mistakes, because they don't admit they make mistakes until things get out of hand. So basically, they told him that he had to adjust to the army, which he tried to do until the end of the book, when everything becomes clear. And that book was bought by Rembrandt Films and turned into an animated cartoon. And that was what the award was for.
And the George Polk Award, isn't that usually awarded for journalists and people who have been in dangerous situations in wars and things?
The George Polk Award was basically, and I suppose still is, given to people who deserve awards who aren't getting them from the Pulitzers and the other award committees, because their work is too far out or challenging or whatever. But it was a prestigious award, vastly appreciated by me and treasured by me. And it was for the cartoons I was doing at the time in the Village Voice, which was then a weekly paper that I appeared in and said the things that I felt were important to say in regard to our living conditions, whether they had to do with our political lives, our personal lives, our parental lives, relationships, whatever was on my mind, I put in the Voice that week in 6 or 8 panels, and they ran it, and it seemed to begin to mean a lot to people.
It certainly did. It meant a lot to me. I think you had that cartoon every week for almost half a century, or close to it anyway.
Well, I think it was about 42 years it ran in the Voice.
Yeah.
Until they fired me so they could hire 3 other guys who would for the same amount of money.
Well, I also think that what happened after that was they pretty much went out of business because you weren't there anymore. That's a fair explanation of what happened to it's actually, a Voice is still around, but it's a very nominal publication at this point in the city of New York. People will remember it for its and anti-establishment views on a lot of things, and local news. And it was a wonderful publication that I read every week, living in New York for some time. And you also won a Pulitzer Prize. And
Yes,
tell us about that one.
it was much appreciated, I loved getting it. I don't remember that the year I won it for. Uh, I remember going back and looking at the work I was given the prize for and thinking I got the prize for this because I didn't think it was one of my great years, but I was happy to get it for any time and any place.
I think
But
for the
I did get it, and it was very much appreciated. And it's right now its far importance is that it will lead my obituaries.
I see. Well, I think it was for you. I was for a lifetime experience of that award for much of what you did. I think most people from that era will remember, and certainly I do have the this one cartoon which was so memorable. It's in the forefront of so many people's minds about a young woman dancing and in various forms. And it's how did you start out in becoming a cartoonist? How did you?
I started at a 3 or 3.5. It was the one thing from the earliest years on that I was fascinated by and wanted to do and dreamed of doing. First, on the basis of the newspaper comic strips that were running at the time. My father would come home from work with the newspapers, and he would open them up, and either he or my mother would read to me what Popeye was doing and what the other comic strips were doing at the time. They were all on huge New York Times size pages, not tabloid pages at the time. And there'd be on one page, maybe 15 or 20 horizontal comic strips. And it was magic just for a kid to look at this stuff and see the variety of different styles and variety of different actions and the running and jumping and violence and fun. And I thought that's what I want for my life. I decided at 3, and that decision remained intact to this very moment.
Speaking of which, you were in the news with a sensational book, Kill My Mother, about 2 years ago, a cartoon book. And I think
well, that was very different. It was a graphic novel, and the technique was more illustrative than I had ever done before, and less cartoony. It was more realistic and in a darker style.
Yes.
And there were 3 volumes published over about 4 or 5 years. Norton published them, and it was a great experience and all new to me. And I didn't think I knew how to do this until I did it. I was looking for somebody to illustrate my writing because I didn't think I could work in the appropriate style, and never found the right person. So I took a shot at it, and that's how that change of career and change of life happened.
Well,
but it's these accidents that I fell into over a period of many, many years that moved me from one thing to another thing to another thing. Very few of them were planned to happen as they did. It was just a case of one thing leading to another. And I was very happy to follow.
Give me an example of that.
Well, Kill My Mother is one of them. I thought it was something that I would write that I was not equipped to illustrate. The illustrator I had in mind was not interested in doing it. And so I took a shot at it. And suddenly I was illustrating this book that I didn't have the right style for, I thought. So I developed a style, changed my style to fit the demands of the book, and managed to make it work. I got away with it and did 2 other volumes following, because it was planned as a trilogy from the start.
Um,
And so it is with the other works. You start doing something that you think will go in one direction, and you find that the work itself wants to go in another direction. And what I've done my entire career, or learned to do, after trying to force my work into what my head wanted me to do, I gave up what my head wanted me to do and just organically followed the flow of where the work was going. And it took me, the work decided what kind of cartoonist I'd be, what kind of career I'd have, and what kind of work I would end up doing. And I shut up and followed.
um,
And it continues to be that way.
yes, and so I know you've lived in East Hampton, and I was curious about something. You moved to Shelter Island for some time, a number of years there, and I visited you there, and you were right in your backyard. Just beyond your backyard was an airport, a landing strip of grass. What was that all about, and how often did a plane come in there?
Well, we bought this small house under construction at the time on Shelter Island, because after looking for some time in the Hamptons and dealing with real estate people who over and over again would find us something we liked very, very much, Joan and my wife Joan and I, we would negotiate what we thought was a deal, agreed on what we thought was a deal, and get the papers back that had nothing to do with what we negotiated with or negotiated on. And this happened at least 4 or 5 times. And finally, we got discouraged with dealing with people who had no intention of following through on their obligations, and thought that Shelter Island might be a broker suggested to us Shelter Island. We went out and we saw this house being built. We loved the property, and the house was put up. We moved into it when it was finally finished, and lived there for, I don't know, 5, 6. And on the back deck, there was a table with an umbrella and you looked out on a field, a wide, expansive, beautiful field that is still there, and which is owned by the community, and it's an airfield for private planes, just tiny little planes that chug in and land, and there aren't many of them. And they never got much in the way, and every once in a while they did, and we negotiated our way through all of that. But it was lovely.
How often would planes come in and out?
They did only on weekends mostly, and because it was a weekend flying, and there never were more than 3 of them, I don't think. So it was not a big deal, and it was a lovely expanse. It still is a lovely expanse, and the lovely people we sold the house to seem to be very pleased with it all.
But I walked around there on that lawn, and I think there was some box where people were supposed to put in money or something. It wasn't. There was no. There was no there. There was no terminal.
Well, not having a there was exactly what we had in mind, because we didn't want another house going up in front of us, and fortunately that was not going to happen, because there was a town ordinance that would not allow that. Otherwise, builders who can build anywhere will build anywhere, as you know.
So, and what are you working on currently?
Well, outside, I'm filling out a contract on a 2-book volume, a graphic novel for middle-level readers called The Mommy Dimension. and working on editing and putting in changes on that now. That Harper's is publishing, and since I've been up here, I've been doing a lot of drawings of one kind or another, of dances in one sort of another, and other things, just playing around and experimenting with directions to move in as I move on. I have no idea what I'm going to keep and what I'm going to throw away. I'm just letting things happen organically, as I have for many, many years now. I just finished illustrating a book of poems and essays and other things by Roger Rosenblatt, who was essentially responsible for bringing me out to the Hamptons in the first place, because he started the writing program that brought me out in the beginning by jitney once a week to come out. And finally, it became my home, and finally, it became my life. And finally, I found a wife. I mean, Roger is basically responsible for the last 50, 60 years of my life, and I hold him happily responsible for all the great changes that have happened as a result of him. He's a lovely man. He's done a beautiful book, and I was thrilled to illustrate it. And that's the last piece of work I've done.
I see. Well, I want to thank you for being on the podcast with it. I want you to give my regards to Joan, to your lovely wife, and I hope to see you soon. And I really enjoy the time I spend with you, and I know everyone else down here does as well. So I appreciate this very much.
Thank you, Dan. It's good to talk to you and see you almost again. You know, it's seeing in person is better, but this is good enough. And to all my friends in the Hampton area, I salute you. I send you my regards. I spent many, many, many happy and sometimes very confused years there, and those friendships continue, because I will return for visits. You will never be out of my mind by very much at all.
Well,
thanks very much.
Thanks again, and appreciate you being on the show.